January 10th, 1992. Somewhere in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, a container ship, the Ever Laurel, is being tossed mercilessly by the waves of a ferocious storm. Suddenly, with a deafening, horrific screech of twisting metal, one of the containers on deck snaps loose and plunges into the black, turbulent water. What was inside that container? Car parts? Electronics? No. 28,800 bath toys, most of them bright yellow plastic ducks. To the shipping company, it was a minor loss of cargo, but for the world of science, this was the beginning of an accidental experiment that would change our understanding of the entire planet. This isn't just the story of a toy, it's the story of how a simple object, lost at sea, became a legendary explorer and an unlikely scientific hero. This is the unseen story of the rubber duck. Our story doesn't start in a bathtub. It starts with a problem. In the early 19th century, rubber was a wonder material, but it was also kind of a disaster. It would melt into a gooey, smelly mess in the summer heat and become brittle and crack in the cold. It was unstable, useless. That is, until a man named Charles Goodyear, after years of obsessive, debt-ridden experiments, accidentally dropped a piece of sulfur-treated rubber on a hot stove in 1839. The result? Vulcanization, a process that stabilized the rubber, making it waterproof, durable, and ready for industry. Suddenly, rubber was everywhere: tires, hoses, and toys. But these first rubber toys weren't the soft, squeezable friends we know today. They were hard, solid chunks of rubber, designed more for teething babies to chew on than for floating. They sank like a rock. The idea of a floating bath toy hadn't even been dreamed up yet. For that to happen, a different kind of artist needed to enter the picture. Enter Peter Gainin, a Russian-born sculptor who moved to America and had a brilliant, simple idea. In the late 1940s, he sculpted a duck. But not just any duck. He designed it to be hollow, made from soft vinyl, and crucially, he added a squeaker. He filed a patent for his creation on April 29, 1949, describing it as a toy duck which is so designed that it will float upright in the water. He had created the rubber duck, the one we recognize today. It was yellow, it was friendly, and it floated. He sold over 50 million of them. But even with millions of ducks floating in millions of bathtubs, our little icon was still just a toy. To become a legend, it needed a voice, and it would find that voice on a very famous street. Rubber ducky, you're the one. You make bath time lots of fun. In February 1970, on the show Sesame Street, a beloved character named Ernie, voiced by the legendary Jim Henson, sang an ode to his best bath time friend. The song Rubber Ducky was an instant hit. It climbed to number 16 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart. Suddenly, the rubber duck wasn't just a piece of plastic anymore. It was a character, a personality, a friend. Ernie's song cemented the rubber duck as a cornerstone of childhood, a symbol of simple, innocent joy. For decades, that's where the story seemed to end. The duck was a toy, a pop culture icon, happily floating in bathtubs around the world. Until that stormy night in the Pacific. January 10th, 1992. The container ship Ever Laurel is sailing from Hong Kong to Tacoma, Washington. On board, a menagerie of bath toys made by the First Years Company. 7,200 red beavers, 7,200 green frogs, 7,200 blue turtles, and 28,800 bright yellow ducks. Somewhere near the 45th parallel, a monster storm hits. Waves the size of buildings crash over the deck. A massive wave slams into a stack of containers, and one of them, holding our 28,800 ducks and their friends, snaps loose and plunges into the black, turbulent water. The container bursts open, and thousands of little plastic toys are set free. An army of bath toys suddenly adrift in the largest ocean on Earth. They were later nicknamed the Friendly Floaties. For most, this would be an industrial accident, a minor loss of cargo, but for one man, it was the beginning of the greatest experiment of his life. Meet Curtis Ebsmeyer, an oceanographer based in Seattle. For years, he had been studying ocean currents, a fantastically complex system of global water circulation. He had a theory. He believed that the world's oceans were connected by a massive network of currents, almost like a giant conveyor belt. The problem? Proving it. Dropping scientific floats into the ocean was incredibly expensive. You could only deploy a few at a time. But 28,800 little floating data points? That was a scientific jackpot. Curtis Ebsmeyer and his partner James Ingram realized these toys were the perfect drifters. They were durable, brightly colored, and there were thousands of them. So they got to work. They modeled the spill in a computer program designed to predict oil slick movements. And then they waited. 10 months later, in November 1992, the first ducks made landfall. They started washing up on the beaches of Sitka, Alaska, over 2,000 miles away from where they were lost. Beachcombers started finding them, a few at first, then dozens. Ebsmeyer put out the call. He asked people along the coast to report any findings. He offered rewards, and the data started pouring in. From the path they took to Alaska, Ebsmeyer and Ingram were able to calculate the speed and path of the North Pacific Gyre, a massive swirling vortex of water. The ducks were acting like messengers from the sea, confirming their computer models with real-world evidence. But the ducks weren't done traveling. Some ducks, caught in a different current, floated west. They washed up in Japan. Others continued their epic journey north. This is where their story goes from interesting to truly incredible. Many of the ducks floated up through the Bering Strait, the narrow passage between Alaska and Russia, and into the Arctic Ocean. Here, they were captured by the polar ice pack. For years, they were frozen solid, moving slowly with the ice across the top of the world. Ebsmeyer predicted they would eventually emerge on the other side, near Greenland. It was a bold prediction, and in the year 2000, it came true. The first ducks, their colors bleached by the sun and sea, began to appear in the North Atlantic. They had survived being frozen for years. They had crossed the Arctic. By 2003, they were being found in Maine and Massachusetts. By 2007, a full 15 years after their journey began, some were even found on the coasts of Britain and Spain. These little $10 toys did what no multi-million-dollar scientific program had ever done. They mapped the world's ocean currents in unprecedented detail. They proved how interconnected our planet's waters truly are. A piece of plastic dropped in the Pacific could and did end up in the Atlantic. This had huge implications for understanding the movement of pollution, plankton, and even downed aircraft. All thanks to a fleet of accidental, unsinkable rubber explorers. While the friendly floaties were on their scientific odyssey, the rubber duck was taking on a new life back on land. It was becoming a giant. In 2007, Dutch artist Florentine Hofman created Rubber Duck, a series of colossal inflatable sculptures. The largest was over 85 feet high. These giant ducks have traveled the world, appearing in harbors from Amsterdam to Sydney to Sao Paulo. Hoffman says his creation has healing properties. It relieves tensions and brings people together. It has no political message. It's just about joy. It reminds us of our shared childhood, connecting people from all over the world with a simple, happy memory. But the duck's journey into our adult lives doesn't stop there. It even found a job in a very unexpected place, the world of computer programming. It's called rubber duck debugging, and it's a real, widely used technique for finding errors in code. The programmer, when faced with a bug they can't solve, will sit down and patiently explain their code, line by line, to a rubber duck sitting on their desk. The idea is that in the process of forcing yourself to articulate the code's purpose and logic, you often spot the error yourself. The duck is a silent, non-judgmental listener. It forces you to simplify and clarify your own thoughts. It's a simple, brilliant, and slightly bizarre problem-solving method. From a toy, to a scientific tool, to a global art piece, to a programmer's confidant, it seems there's nothing this little duck can't do. It's even become a symbol of defiance. In recent years, the rubber duck has been adopted by protesters around the world. It started in Serbia in 2015 and was famously used in anti-corruption protests in Russia in 2017. Why a duck? Because it's seen as a gentle, almost comical symbol. It's disarming. It represents the everyday citizen standing up to power, armed not with aggression, but with the peaceful, universal symbol of innocence. So, let's think about that journey. It started as a lump of unstable tree sap. It was transformed by an accidental discovery on a hot stove. It was given its iconic form by a sculptor in the 1940s. It was given a soul by a puppet on television in the 1970s. Then, by pure chance, it was thrown into the sea and became one of the most important oceanography tools in modern history, teaching us about the very planet we live on. It's a toy, a tool, a muse, a symbol of joy, a symbol of protest. The story of the rubber duck is the perfect example of what our channel is all about. It proves that the most ordinary, everyday objects can have the most extraordinary, unseen lives. They have histories we never imagined and futures we can't predict. It floated from our bathtubs into the very center of our culture, science, and history, all on its own. The friendly floaties taught us that something lost in the middle of the ocean can find its way to every corner of the globe. It makes you wonder, what other everyday objects in your life have been on an incredible journey we know nothing about? Look around you, your coffee mug, your ballpoint pen, your keychain. Maybe one of them has a secret. Let us know in the comments below what common object you think is hiding an amazing unseen story. We might just investigate it for our next video. And maybe, just maybe, you'll never look at a rubber duck the same way again.